Well, welcome to Office Hours. Paul and I had a great time talking to you at the Chinwag in LA. That was awesome. You were amazing. And this is kind of a chance for us to sort of go on a more deep dive. And we're calling this sort of Office Hours with the Professor. So welcome to the great Bill Hader.
Oh, thank you for having me, the great Steve.
Hey, one of the things I thought was interesting was that we both have this kind of interest in philosophy, and you're reading philosophy, and I'm a huge fan and teach philosophy. And I thought it would be kind of fun if we sort of talked about films that we thought of as being philosophical. I mean, there's no sort of right answer on this. You look it up and there's always like sort of a short list, there's always these specific films. But I was wondering if there were films that you saw as a kid or even more recently and you thought, okay, that feels like a philosophical film to me, or that really makes me reflect.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's a really interesting question because there'd be like kind of philosophical moments, and those moments also could be termed, as just cinematic, where it's the thing, I've said this a bunch, but I remember as a kid seeing, I was way too young to see it, but seeing Taxi Driver.
Oh, shit.
And there's a scene in Taxi Driver that I think the most violent part of Taxi Driver, the worst scene, is when he takes Sybil Shepherd to the porn movie, because it's just so humiliating, but also kind of, I used to think, oh, he's doing it because he doesn't know any better. But then as I watch it now, I'm like, oh, maybe it's a self-sabotage thing. It's more psychological.
Yeah.
But there's a moment in it where then he calls her on the phone, and he's on this payphone in a hallway, and he's saying, did you get the flowers I sent you? Did you get that? And he's trying to, you could tell that she doesn't want to see him again, but he's asking her questions, and it's really painful to watch. And you're watching, and then the camera dollies off of him, completely unmotivated. Just dollies off of him as he's talking, and it lines up going down a hallway, and he's continuing to talk, but now he's off camera. And then he enters and walks out. And I remember thinking that was the first truly cinematic moment I felt in my life, because it felt like,
really,
the movie doesn't want to watch this.
Oh, shit.
It's like,
that's very
this
interesting.
is so painful.
Yeah.
The movie doesn't want to watch this. And I thought, man.
It's averting its eyes.
Yeah, you could do that. You know what I mean?
Wow.
Like that's okay to do that. You're allowed to, as a filmmaker, as an artist, say, well, how am I reacting to this? I don't know if that was Scorsese's, that was what he was thinking.
But that was how it hit you.
That's how it hit me, And so there's always moments like that it doesn't, it's intuitive, and I don't know if philosophical is the right term, but in a reflective way, it made you, I had an emotion, and then I reflected on, that cinematic moment, and it really stuck with me.
That's a really good example, because I vaguely remember that, and now I'm going to go back and check on it. But I also think, like in horror films, I can't, like, if the shot, and you probably do this a lot when you're making films, but if the shot doesn't give me any peripheral vision, I start to really sweat. I really start to like panic a little bit. And that's a kind of intuitive sort of experience that I'm having. It's kind of an embodied experience that makes me feel the scene in a way. It's not philosophy per se, but it is like a kind of secret language in cinematography.
Oh, completely. Yeah. Horror films do it all the time. And some, and thrillers do that all the time. And then another filmmaker, Sam Fuller, who I really like, he had and Scorsese says this, so this isn't my, he actually says this in a documentary about Sam Fuller, is that the frame in his movies, he always frames things where you constantly think some sort of violence is going to happen.
Yeah.
It just feels like at some awful moment, someone's going to fight or something terrible, like someone's going to get stabbed or hurt. Pick up in South Street, the whole movie, you're just waiting for something
bad
awful
to
to enter into that frame and hurt the person that's in the frame. And, but it's a mood. It's a thing that you can't grasp, you know? The people who, when you say philosophy and film, they do tend to go to people like Bresson and Bergman, American filmmakers. I would say Terrence Malick. You know,
yes.
it is kind of
who
a
studied
visual,
philosophy too,
and he was a big. Yeah, he was like, and you feel it in the movies. I mean, especially something like Tree of Life. I mean, I remember seeing that movie in a theater. And it was like it ended and no one got up.
Really?
And then the lights came up and everybody still didn't get up. We all just sat there. And it you had just, had an experience, that you couldn't. But I understood it in some way that, some way it might be too simplistic, when you leave the thing and you're kind of going, yeah, this guy's Brad Pitt's worried about his life. But then when you think about it in terms of the dinosaur and how man came into being and everything, and now we're here in the 50s with this guy, like, why does it, and then you just sound like a freshman philosophy major, like, what's it all about, man? And I remember saying that my friend Nick being like, yeah, okay, whatever. Who knows?
Well, that's true, though. When you look at, I remember there was this debate I was having with my friend about Terrence Malick films like A Thin Red Line or Tree of Life, and at the same time, I think Spielberg had done Saving Private Ryan, like right around the same time, I think, as Thin Red Line.
Yeah, 1998. Yeah, they came out the same year.
Yeah, and we were having this debate. Like he liked the clear moral, ethical sort of lessons and sort of reflections in Saving Private Ryan, and there's like a kind of story. Mm-hmm. And I like the Terrence Malick thing where like you're just, what is war, and is there, this thin line between like violence and love, and like there's a salamander on a tree going really slow, like it's taste, I guess.
Well, it's this thing that I liked both those films, but I remember seeing Thin Red Line and people, I was 20 when that movie came out. I remember my friends were like, what the fuck was that? That was so boring,
I loved it.
And I was incredibly moved by it. And I'd never seen a war movie like that where it is like from God's, a God's POV or some, when, it's like these guys are killing each other, but then this crocodile, I saw it as like, then there's this thing over here maybe I made, and this is what it's doing, and here's these humans, and this is what they're choosing to do to each other.
Yeah.
Yeah. But everything had equal weight. Like a shot of a tree going, it was the same weight as, there's a great moment where the soldier's reading that letter from his wife leaving him, and the camera is just kind of coming around a corner and peeking at him, almost like this entity or we or something is just kind of peeking in at, it's just incredibly objective, and kind of just peeking into everybody's soul in a way. And I really am moved in that film where there's a scene where they from my memory of it, they take over like a Japanese encampment and they're killing everybody. It's kind of a big slaughter.
Yeah.
And I think it's Woody Harrelson's VO comes in where he goes, this darkness, where does it come from?
Yes,
and it was like, I'd never seen that in a war movie before where it was like, how am I capable of doing this?
Yeah, where's the John Wayne coming in and just...
Where is the John Wayne? What are we
What's
doing?
Happening?
Yeah. And I was so moved by that. And then my friends were like, how much longer is it? But I found that movie incredibly moving. And don't get me wrong, like Saving Private Ryan has some
It's a great film too. Yeah.
It has some of the best war scenes, is just pure action scenes I've ever seen. Still, I mean, you had that Omaha Beach scene is like,
It's incredible.
I had a friend who was funny, this Canadian guy. Well, he's not really my friend. He was a guy I worked with, and he was saying he used to go to people's house. He would install, home sound systems, and for the TV, the thing he would test it on was he would test the sound system with the Omaha Beach sequence, and people finally were like, "Can you please stop doing this?
Can you stop the little kids in the living room?"
Yeah. See a guy looking for his arm, and their heads are getting blown off, and he's like, "Yeah, man, I think this is sounding pretty good."
We need to tweak the mid range on this.
Yeah, but he was Canadian. He's like, "Yeah, they told me not to do that anymore." I was like, "Oh yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, I should probably stop."
But that's true though. Like Saving Private Ryan has human beings are the center of the story, and more specifically, it's Americans and the Allies who are going to win in this moral tale. But in Terrence Malick's films, like you said, everything is just presented as equally valuable. So it's a kind of a Buddhist picture of the world where, I mean, there's this famous Buddhist monk, Thich Nhat Hanh, the Vietnamese guy, says, you think garbage is bad and flowers are good, but really flowers are on their way to becoming garbage, and garbage is on its way to becoming flowers. That's really how the world is.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and that's how those Terrence Malick movies, or at least the ones I love, feel. I mean, especially, Days of Heaven, it's the same thing of being out on this land and these people's kind of this love triangle going on, but then also to say, well, in this giant scheme of this land and this play, like, what does this really matter? It's kind of like the location of that is very beautiful, but also vast and oppressive, or and then the locusts coming in and taking over. It's like you have no real control over this thing, and you're. So I watch those films, and I don't know if it's meant to be this way, but it's like, this industry coming in, the plane, the train, all this stuff, and your little drama is really insignificant. To this giant other thing, because locusts are going to come and take you out. Your own heart is going to get you killed. Like giving a shit about anything is going to blow. It's so, and if you were just even, none of this shit would happen. You can't be. It's impossible. Yeah.
But that's the thing. Like, humans have to assert themselves. We're the protagonists of the story. We can't be equal. Yeah, it's true.
Remember, we keep fucking ourselves, and it's like.
Well, I wonder, I know you like Tarkovsky. Did Kubrick films like Clockwork Orange, did that hit you hard when you were a kid?
Huge.
Okay, me too. Clockwork Orange was a big deal for me.
Clockwork Orange was a massive one for me, and it was really polarizing. It's still like a very polarizing movie. I talk to people and and I think they have good points about it too. I have a friend that says, I don't like that these guys are, she grew up with those posters of droogs, and the droogs are like a pop culture thing, and she's like, they're rapists.
Yeah, exactly.
And so it's kind of, I didn't like going into dorm rooms, and there's these or guys would dress up like it for Halloween, and that's just like, I found that really disturbing. And that's a fair point. For me, seeing it, outside of just the cinematic aspects of it, every aspect of that movie, the photography, the acting, the costume design, the production design, the music, Jesus.
Yeah.
Everything is so specific to make it something so incredibly unique. And, Paul and I have talked about, I think we talked about with you, the acting in that's like kabuki theater. It's not real. And I think that kind of helps. It helps to me, I always felt that film was he's narrating it, so it's from his point of view. And he has this very skewed point of view, an exaggerated point of view of humanity. And if you watch it, when things are going good for him, the music's high and everything, and the women in it.
Beethoven.
Yeah, and the women in it are all kind of gorgeous and voluptuous. And I understood the criticism of the male gaze of that movie, but
Yep.
I think it's totally, I think that's totally warranted. But the way I saw it was that, yeah, it is the male, it's his gaze. So I don't know if those women look like that in the reality.
Interesting.
In his reality,
Yeah, they do. Yeah, I
they
didn't
all
thought
look
of that.
like this. Well,
Yeah.
in his reality, that's the way his parents look. His mom has a weird fucking, in his reality, this is what it is.
And the women are
'Cause
highly sexualized, and that's
highly
very
sexualized,
interesting.
and the members of his group are all idiots,
Yeah,
and the other groups are all kind of like ugly morons, but he's this kind of virile, and the woman that who gives him the test, is a real shrew, and
yeah,
how everything is very caricature-y. It's like his little caricature book,
yeah.
and
That's a helpful way to think of the film. I hadn't really thought that through.
yeah, well, for me, that's how I always saw the film. Not always, repeated viewings of it, because what unlocked it for me was the moment when he's kicked out of his house, and it cuts to that scene.
The other guy lives in his house.
Oh yeah, that's Joe. That's Joe.
Go ahead.
He lives here now. He's taken your room, but but there's a moment where Malcolm McDowell is feeling, he has a little parcel and he's sad and he's been kicked out of the house, and it's the scene where the bum that they beat up notices him, and the music's very sad. It's like it's almost overly, like,
Yeah. Melodrama.
it is actually, like when melodrama, when people do, like when you feel sorry for someone, you pretend to do like
Yeah.
a violin. It's literally that music.
Right, heavy vibrato on the strings.
Yeah. And he's just like, it was like, all is lost for poor little me. And then he gets the shit kicked out of him, and then it just keeps getting worse and worse. And what I loved about that film, or what I thought was amazing about it, was that the theme of the movie, my reaction to it is the kind of the theme of the movie, where I was watching this guy do all these despicable things, and then he gets caught, and then he gets out, and all the people he perpetrated it on, they are now perpetrating it upon him. And karma, and I found it really satisfying.
Yeah.
So I'm finding it really satisfying seeing him get the shit kicked out of him. And that's kind of what the movie's about. Yeah.
But then the last act is like hard for you to take because there's a reversion, right?
Right.
To the
But right, where it's like he gets beat up and everything, and I'm like, this is kind of what the movie's about. Without violence, we are not human. Without this anger I'm having right now, I am not a human being.
Yes, that's very
You know what I
interesting.
mean?
Yeah. Yeah, you're
Without
totally
this.
enjoying the revenge. Yeah. No, it's true.
I'm enjoying the revenge, and that heat or this anger or whatever towards this guy, this asshole, I'm now like, oh, this is kind of what the movie's about, which is like,
Yeah.
if I don't have that was taken away from me, I would cease to be human. So it's like, it's kind of enacting into it, and then so by the end of the film, he reverses it and he's, cured. And the last bit of it is kind of like just the most like hardcore social satire it is, where you literally have the government feeding him and all these things. And it's very funny and everything. But, I think that for me, that's the power of that movie from my experience. And believe me, I've seen that movie with other people, and they go, "Can we please turn this off?" Or "This is not for me." Or I'll recommend it. I recommended it to my friend and his wife, and the next time I saw them, they're like, "What the fuck is wrong with you?"
That?
We turned it off. That was awful. And I was like, "But don't you?" Like, why do you always like this dark stuff? Why can't you watch Father the Bride or something? Why is it always got to be such dark shit?
Well, I think I would agree with your interpretation. In philosophy, there's this problem. It's called the problem of evil. And it's basically like, why is there evil? It's a particular problem if you're religious, because it's like, why would God allow so much violence and, disease and and innocent babies getting killed. Like, why would God allow that? And so
Yeah.
if you look at that film, like, and I think this is partly what Anthony Burgess was doing in the novel, is like, where does violence come from? Where does evil come from? And it's basically part of the human equipment, the instinctual equipment. And then you're right, if you see he actually gets it by conditioning, they sort of tune it out of him. And then, but you're saying the whole time he's getting attacked, you're feeling it, like it's activating the same kind of rage in you,
yeah,
the viewer.
It's satisfying.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, that's why we like all the Liam Neeson movies.
Well, it's why I watched Dateline, because at the end of Dateline, the guy gets caught for the most part. If someone doesn't get caught at the end of a 4-hour Dateline, I'm like, what the fuck was that? But I watch Dateline because I want to see the guy who did something terrible get caught and be like sad when they get put to jail. And you're like, there's justice, because it tells you it is a fair world. It is a fair, just world.
That's right.
I want to feel that. And if I don't feel that, then I can't, get up out of bed in the morning, or, but
you can only experience it in art, in the imagination, because reality doesn't give it to you.
Right. So, there's that thing where I'm watching Alex, in Clockwork Orange, get beat up when his two friends, his cohorts, are now cops, and they're beating him with a pipe, and they're holding him underwater. And it's really tough, but there's a part of me that's like, well, I watched this guy, rape a woman in front of her husband, and he did all this horrible shit.
Yeah, he's scumbag.
He's scumbag. I'm kind of loving this. But then I'm like, well, wait a minute. wait.
Why am I loving this so much?
Why am I loving this? Wait, that's not good.
It's true, though.
Yeah. What does it say about me? Like, what is it about seeing the other side that lose that's so satisfying,
I think there's kind of like a ne'er-do-well commits some terrible atrocity against a kid or a puppy, and then the rest of the film is the guy getting revenge on them. And that's super satisfying. But in Barry, you've totally mixed these things together. Like, I feel like you must have done this intentionally, or maybe you did it like unconsciously, but you've got sort of like revenge experiences, but then you've got people aligning their feelings of empathy, like over here, and then you're taking it away, and then it's unclear who the good and the bad people are in Barry.
Yeah.
And that throws people, I think.
Oh, I know it throws people. They tell me it throws.
It makes them uncomfortable. It makes people
they
uncomfortable.
Go, I don't know how I'm supposed to feel about this. Yeah. People, and that is true.
That's the good stuff. That, to me.
Yeah, when you're writing the stuff, you're always hoping that you're getting to some sort of honesty, and the truth is always like it's elusive. So you're always in the writer's room, right? It was like, okay, that's fun and that's exciting, but is that honest? To your experience? I was constantly saying that to the writers. I would go, does this all ring true to you? And some of it didn't. A good example of that, where the writers help you, there's a scene that a lot of people find to be the most uncomfortable scene in the entire show, where my character, Barry, in season 3, yells at his girlfriend at work. There's a scene where I really flip out at my girlfriend.
Yeah, that's intense.
And I back up her against the wall, and I'm screaming at her and really scare her. So we did that, and we showed it to some people. And Emma Barry, one of her writers, was like, I didn't like watching that at all. And I really dislike him. And I was like, that's the kind of the idea, is that I personally was getting really sick of 2 seasons of Barry where everybody was like, we love Barry. And I was going, I'm so sick of this. I'm so sick
Let's
of
make
this.
him really dark.
Well, he killed season one, he killed a guy, his best friend who didn't do anything wrong.
He was always dark.
And I was like, what the hell? Why are people enjoying this guy? And so, and they hated Sally. People would be like, oh, she's so mean. And that was Emily Heller, one of her writers, would say, Barry kills people. But Sally was the unlikable one.
Right, she was the enemy.
She was the people that, people would. And so I very consciously was like, I want to do a scene that kind of shows like, this is what's happening, like with this person.
Yeah.
So Emma Barry, one of her writers, incredibly good writer, said, I just don't feel that he could do that and there wouldn't be some sort of repercussion, that someone in that room wouldn't see or say something.
Yeah.
Because initially that happened, and then you just went to the next scene, and then the storyline was that she feels bad that she kind of reverts back to, because she was in an abusive relationship, she reverts back to this old way of behaving, and we had that, but none of the people in the room did anything. And Emma Barry pitched, and we ended up doing it, that this actor, Katie, played by Elsie Fisher, sees it and is like, I'm going to go tell someone about it.
Yeah.
She goes, that seems more true to me, that another person, especially a younger woman, would go and say something to somebody. And that's where, you try to get to that truth, because before it was like, why aren't you having anybody say anything? And it's like, well, that kind of makes it a little messy, don't you think? Because we have such a nice straight line right here in the writing where it's about them.
But you need that messiness,
But she goes, no, it needs but it wasn't true to her experience, because Emma, I think, she's like, if I was in that room, I would go say, I just saw this.
Yeah.
And that is like going, okay, that's, we got to do it. You're right. That is your truth. That's the thing. Like, so we got to go do it,
I wonder, like, are these little elements which seem almost, this is sort of why I think people really were drawn to Sopranos a little bit too, because they would start to do this. There would be these little elements that didn't really go anywhere in the plot, but they sort of built up a sort of credibility to the world that you were looking at. And it would just be a simple thing like what you're talking about here, where somebody would just say something and it wouldn't go anywhere in the plot, but it would just make the world more real.
Sopranos did it better than anybody, and I think they did it in the boldest ways where, I remember there'd be whole seasons where people would go, what was that episode even about? Like, how is that? Right. I would have TV writer friends go, wait, but that doesn't move the story forward. And it was like, but it feels real. Yeah. And
that's cool.
And it makes me feel, it doesn't move the story forward, but I relate to it. This feels very like, not relatable, like I kill people or whatever, but I've been in that room where I understand it. It has a ring of truth to it, I should say, instead of relative. It has a real ring of truth to it, and a ring of truth of life, a good movie. I just watched my 14-year-old, her mother and I, she's going into freshman year of high school, and so we sat her down.
Tough time.
We sat her down and we showed her Dazed and Confused, because we loved that movie.
Great.
And she loved it, but we sat and watched that movie. And that's a movie where it's like all, it's like American Graffiti and those things, but there's no real plot.
Yeah.
But every moment of that movie watching, I was like, man, Richard Linklater really captures something with this movie where it just all rings true to every single person, the way they're relating to each other, the funny things, but also the sad things. And it never felt false. For me, it never hit a false note, that movie,
That's very interesting. I mean,
but there's no plot to it. If you
Yeah.
say, what's that movie about? You go, well,
right. You can't stoners and you can't.
these guys go out and they go hang out, and this football player doesn't want to like sign this piece of paper, and that's about the end of it.
Right. If you tell the story, it just sounds really bad. I mean, I remember it was J.R. Tolkien said, like, never tell the story of Beowulf because it sounds so dumb that no one will ever take it seriously.
Yeah.
You have to actually go through the sort of language of the text, and that's where the world of it comes alive.
Yeah.
But I want to ask you one more thing before we get off it, which is why people are. I mean, if you look at Barry or you look at Tony Soprano, or I think if you look at like the Joker. Or even like, I remember my son was just like, the only thing he liked about Star Wars when he saw it was Darth Vader. And I'm just like, what are your thoughts about the attraction we have towards the evildoer, the rule breaker?
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, it's all different for each person. You know, I think the mob, I mean, Goodfellas and Sopranos, but Goodfellas especially, it was like, it's almost like, wow, could you imagine living with your friends and you just do whatever the hell you want? And I mean, look at this life they led. It's paradise. But then you see that that's why the opening of that is so brilliant, where he's, Billy Bats in the back of and he stabs him. He goes, ever since I was a kid, I want to be a gangster. It's like, bam, that's it. This is the world I wanted to be in, but there is something alluring about that, and I always just found it interesting. I was always and still am like read a lot and watch a lot of true crime, and I never understood it. And I think my parents were a little concerned about how much I like true crime stuff, but and I read a thing with Stephen King, and Stephen King talked about he had a Charles Starkweather. He kept clippings of Charles Starkweather, like he had a scrapbook of all like the newspaper things of the guy who, Starkweather went.
Oh God.
And
that's morbid.
And his mom or someone was like, why did you do it? And he goes, I just want to know what that looks like. And I want to know everything about that thing so I could stay the hell away from it.
That kind of evil, that kind
and so there is there's something fascinating about the thing that terrifies you,
Yeah.
And so when I talk to people who like true crime, a lot of us are just really anxious people.
Interesting.
I'm very anxious. And so it's like when you're looking at those things, you're kind of going, and you're identifying.
Yeah.
but then B, in the story, justice. Oh, good. Okay. I'm going to live in this lie where everybody gets caught. And we're all going to be fine,
So you're kind of preparing, in a way, the story helps you prepare for certain kinds of threats that might be in the world. And then you're getting your sense of justice restored by the ending.
Exactly, yeah, but it's not good to watch. Because it
ramps it up. Right?
Well, it ramps it up and it dilutes your mind that this is happening every day.
True. Yeah.
So if you watch as many true crime shows as I do, a lot of these shows have the exact same cases. And it's like, I'm so lame that, I know this one, and I turn off the show, but it's just a different...
You're looking for discrepancies in the story.
And I'm looking at it going like, I know this one. They've interviewed this guy. Like, this guy's been interviewed on like 9 different shows, about like his friend missing or whatever. And, but yeah, why are, you could talk about Alex DeBarge, and Clockwork Orange, the same as like Richard III, like what, all through history, what is this fascination with evil?
Like you said, there's a way in which the evildoer is a warning, but also I think there's another approach, which is some people are really attracted, like, I could be this person.
There's a seductive part of it.
Yeah,
it's very seductive.
I wish I could break the rules like this. There's a sexiness. My students love like monsters in the sense that they identify with them.
Yeah.
They'll say like, well, I'm also like an outsider, and these are the outsiders. And so Joker and even like Alien and, you know, like The Thing and stuff, they sort of identify with the creature because it's breaking all the rules and get, you know, ultimate freedom and all that stuff too. It's punk.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very punk, and it you know, a lot of violence is, somewhere it was like, yeah, violence is just a way of is just control.
Yeah.
You know, violence is like a way of controlling a thing.
Yeah.
And so when you feel out of control and you feel like you don't matter and you just want some sort of control,
Yeah.
and then you see this thing just able to control its destiny, and I think it's why you go to wrestling matches, WWF and stuff. There is something so attractive about that is primal.
Yes. That's a good point.
Of, you know, what is that primal that's been around for, you know, you go to Rome and it's like, here's where they had the lions.
Right, here's the gladiators and shit, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, it wasn't like TV was invented and then suddenly everybody started being violent to each other. It's like, no, this has been going on there's cave paintings, you know?
Right.
And so, I don't know what that is. I find it really, there's some, you know, it's like 2001, you know, it's that opening of that where, you know,
yeah,
the guy with with the bone, and then that's my water.
Yeah,
you stay
violence
over there.
At the very start of civilization.
And it's about how do I don't want you near my water, so I need to control the situation.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
Here's how I control the situation, you know? And then you have Hal, the computer, going, why the fuck? Okay, I have to control this situation. These two dumb humans are gonna, you know,
fuck it up.
I have to control this. They're gonna fuck it up. I gotta control the situation, you know? And I think it's really fascinating to me, you know? But yeah.
Well, it's true that like, if you look at human violence, it's like right from the start of our species, like everywhere we went on the planet, everything kind of died, like all the megafauna, all this stuff, the Neanderthals. But also like, there's one of the things that Lovecraft said, which I really like about horror. He's like, you know, there's a kind of cosmic horror too, which is, it's not just that human beings are violent, but nature is also just, you know, red in tooth and claw. Like it's just violence all the way down to the insect level.
Yeah.
And that's like really creepy because that suggests that like nature doesn't care about you. It's just churning through, you know. That's a different kind of horror.
Yeah, there's something worse where it's not malevolent, it's just indifference, you know?
Indifferent.
It's indifferent. And you're just like, okay.
Well, this has turned out to be a very cheery show.
Well, this is pretty much every conversation I get into, Steve. People
me too. So that's why we bonded.
Yeah, I think people were like, I wish you could. Yeah, I had a therapist say, I think you need lead with a positive narrative.
Oh my God. Me and Paul, it's like, that would just be the most crushing sense.
Yeah, it's just no one would want to hang out with that. Me, you, and Paul just being like, Paul I just don't, this is the craziest. Yeah, it's just the worst. But yeah, Kubrick is that way. I would say the Coen Brothers also have a real, you know, Ethan Coen studied philosophy, I think, at Princeton, and their stuff, you know, Barton Fink and
A Serious Man.
Serious really Man, good. Completely. God,
so
and Man Who Wasn't There. About you know,
great.
But Serious Man's the one that, you know, that really stuck with me. Just being raised in a kind of like a fundamentalist Christian place. My family was not religious, but, you know, Tulsa, Oklahoma was everywhere around us, you know. And
were you a believer as a kid, or you were just kind of neutral on it?
Kind of neutral. My dad grew up like really strict Catholic, and he almost became a priest. And I think through osmosis, I inherited all like the Catholic guilt and all like that stuff, and the fear of, you know,
it runs deep.
It runs deep. Just, just when you watch, I've had a couple people go, God, Barry is one of the most Catholic shows I've ever seen.
It does, actually, I got that too. As you know, I was raised Catholic.
Yeah, but I think if people were raised Catholic, they really relate to that show. And it's funny because I went to a Augustinian school, but I didn't really, for high school, but I didn't really pay much attention to the actual,
the theology of it,
the theology of it all. No, but through osmosis, you get this idea that Serious Man, I think, illustrated so well, even though it's about Judaism, is there is a God, and you just have to do it. You just have to be a serious, good man. Doesn't matter. God can do whatever the fuck he wants to you.
Yeah, right. You have no say in the matter.
You have no say in the matter, but just know this: if you're out of line, you're done.
Yeah, that's right.
Comes down to that.
What's the old joke? Like, if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans.
Yeah. Tell him your plans, and then he's like, okay. Yeah,
but that's the problem of evil again. Like, that's you were raised on it in a sense through osmosis, and I think that film is asking, like, and that's what the Book of Job is about. Like, what do you do, and how do you get through life? And I think that Coen Brothers like consistently keep making this movie. Even No Country for Old Men is a little bit like this too. The Cormac McCarthy stuff.
Oh, completely. Yeah, No Country for Old Men. Yeah, that movie is so brilliant. And again, when I saw it in the theater, the people were like, "What the hell is this?" But I thought it was so brilliant because it is, structurally a thriller. It's a chase movie, and then the theme of the movie kind of comes in towards the end, where suddenly your main character is just killed.
Yeah, that was so shocking.
And the Tommy Lee Jones character really accomplishes nothing.
Yeah, it's so bleak.
and this idea of and Harvey Bardem, that scene with him and Kelly MacDonald at the end is so brutal.
Yeah.
You don't have to do this, and it's like,
oh my God, Christ. So intense, man.
But that ending, where he gets hit by that car, and it's the youth putting the sling around him, I thought was so, these children, how can I help you? And they help him, and you go, fuck, it's No Country for Old Men. Now here's the next generation.
Yeah, right.
Is helping the devil with his.
They tried to sell him a shirt or something, doesn't he? Like try to sell it to him too, or
they give him a thing, but it's such a brilliant ending, and and that thing where he has that dream about Tommy Lee Jones's dream at the end of that movie about seeing his dad, and he's on a horse and
carrying the light or carrying the flame or something.
Carrying the flame, and then he's what happened next? And he goes, I woke up, and it cuts to black, and it's just a ticking of a clock. It's like, God, this is the end. Just waiting for the minutes to die down before you're done. Like, what you're trying to do does not matter. Your little action movie in the real world doesn't fucking matter. And I just thought it was great. Yeah.
Okay, but I got a theory on this. I think, like, if you look at the Cormac McCarthy like source material for No Country, and you look at that film, I think you get a different story after Cormac McCarthy has a kid, because then he writes The Road.
Yeah,
and The Road has a different ending. Like, it's bleak as fuck. The whole story of The Road is super bleak, but the ending has a little more hope in it, and I think
it's a little bit more tender. Yeah,
I think it's the difference in because Cormac McCarthy didn't have a kid until very late in life, and it changes you. Like, you see the world very differently.
Yeah, it does.
I think.
Yeah, I think you see it differently in good and bad ways. In my experience, right, kid, they bring a lot more hope and positivity into your life, and you do kind of go, God, my shit really does not matter. I have this thing, these little kids that I need to, and they're so positive. And then as you get older, and they get older, they inspire you, and they give you so much strength just being themselves. My kids do things, and I admire them so much, and I go, my God, I need a little of that.
Me too.
As you get older, you know less. And the more you get older, we realize how much you don't really know as much.
It's true.
And so you see that, and but then also you see now there's like these other things that every
More
time
anxiety.
I'm driving, more anxiety. You see a traffic accident, I'm like, where are my kids? Oh Jesus, it's just
Totally.
And so there's that I'm constantly, working on, struggling with that.
I think that's true. Like you have an extended nervous system. When you have kids, it's like they could be in another state, and it's like your nervous system is all the way there. So good things happen, and you feel good, and bad things happen there, and you feel awful, and it's really strange. It's very different from pre-kid, nervous system.
Yeah, pre-kid, and I hate like people who don't have kids. I'm just like so, I'm saying this jokingly, but I'm always like, man, you guys, it's like, hey man, let's have dinner at 8. And I'm like, what? What do you mean have dinner at 8? Are you out of your mind? We're going to have dinner at 5. I'm in bed at 8. What world do you think?
That's great.
Dinner at 8.
But you do have this like tension between, you're a famous person, and there's a sense in which all of us want to be important, and you might be an artist of some kind, and you want to make something that transcends who you are and maybe lasts a long time. But your kids don't give a shit about that. You're just their dad. And so you have this sort of meaning question, like, where's the real meaning? Is it like the big thing, or is it just the little, I'm at the little sports event of my kid, and that's more important,
I know it sounds like a cliche, but it's just being in the moment of a thing, and just saying like tomorrow I have to go see, my kids want to go see a movie I do not want to see. So fucking
do your dad duty.
Do your dad duty and go see the movie, and it's like, all right, I'm going to go see that movie, But then what always happens is I get annoyed, and because I'm a movie geek, and I'm like, I don't want to sit and watch this, and I'm being a baby. And then I go, and I will say 100% of the time I have a great time with them.
Yeah, that's
I watch them enjoy it, and they're loving it and laughing and having a good time. And then afterwards, we're all in a good mood or if they hated it, it's so fun because they're commenting on how stupid it is, and they're like, "What is this? What is it? This is boring," And it's like, I have a great time,
That's, I think, that's the lesson of people. Everybody knows It's a Wonderful Life. Everyone knows Frank Capra's film, and they think of it as like a Christmas movie. But it's way darker than people like acknowledge.
It's incredibly dark. It is incredibly dark.
And then it's sort of this lesson too. He wants to be important. He wants to be ambitious. But then that's not where the shit is. That's not where the reality is for him. Like, he gets shown that it's in these other social connections or whatever.
It's in these. You do matter. It's just you're not mattering the way that you think you matter.
Yeah, right.
And
it's
smart. I'm always very moved by that film. I think that within certain cinema circles, it's considered not like it's not. It's like a sentimental thing, but I don't find it sentimental. I mean, I think the
so
ending
either.
is very hopeful. I think it's actually very dark. Him hating where he grows up, and I mean that scene with his wife, Donna Reed, where he gets so angry with her because it's like, now you're gonna make me stay here, and all this, and I mean, he's gonna jump off a bridge.
He does.
Well, he does jump off a bridge, yeah. So I don't know. Yeah, I love that film.
Did you ever see the Hitchcock film Rope? Are you a fan of Rope?
Yeah, there is a thing in Rope that I always think of that I thought was so brilliant. It was I think it's Farley Granger playing the piano. And
Oh,
he's
yeah.
playing it. And then as Jimmy Stewart is asking them questions, and he's getting intense, and the piano playing gets more and more kind of anxious, and it gets faster and faster. I just thought that was like such a brilliant idea, to show that he was trying to play it off, that he was fine.
Yeah.
Through the piano playing, you saw. I thought that was really good.
There's a dead body basically in like right there, hidden in a crate, and they're trying to hide it. And it's classic two guys trying to get away with the perfect murder. I mean, it is based on the Leopold and Loeb murder.
Yeah, that's right.
In Chicago.
Yeah.
And that they were actually, Clarence Darrow argued in their case, like, these kids, you can't do the death penalty on them. They were reading too much Nietzsche at the University of Chicago, and Nietzsche's the guy that messed them all up. That's the real culprit.
Yeah. Can you imagine if that was true? How many philosophy students would be killing? Just the amount of philosophy kids. Yeah, it'd just be mass deaths all over in university cities, little university towns. It's like, there's another murder. It's like, let's go check this philosophy.
Check the philosophers.
Check the philosophers. Are you guys reading Nietzsche? You guys reading Nietzsche? Y'all reading Nietzsche?
I know you're pressed for time. I just want to ask one last question, which is, what's the stuff that you're reading now that you're getting into in terms of philosophy?
Philosophy? I mean, I was reading that Bertrand Russell book, The History of, and I kind of just dip in and out of that.
It's good.
And it's really, because I don't know anything, I'm like, I'm going to take your word on this because he's pretty opinionated. Birdie's pretty opinionated.
He is. Classic.
But it's funny, but it's interesting, and then I'm going to embarrass myself because I'm terrible pronouncing these people's names, so I apologize.
Go for it.
Schopenhauer?
Yeah, Schopenhauer.
Schopenhauer.
Yeah.
Schopenhauer.
Good.
Schopenhauer. Woo! I read the thing, but I can't fucking say it. But
the Germans.
The Germans. I like the thing that he wrote. I saw some sort of thing about, I think it's him, about how to deal with other people, where you obsess over other people who. Do you know this thing? Or it's like if you're walking down the road and you trip over a rock.
Oh, I don't know it.
You don't get mad at the rock.
Oh, yes.
Do you know this?
Yes. Yeah.
You don't go like,
what's wrong with you,
that
rock?
Rock did that. What's wrong with you, rock? And obsessing over the rock, you go, ow, I tripped over a rock, and keep moving. Right. And essentially, that's how you should treat people who are mean to you or shitty.
That's hilarious.
Instead of like over complicating it and going, why doesn't this rock like me? Like, why would that rock do that? It's like, you just have to kind of, it's like, fucking rock, and then just keep moving.
That's right. That
I don't know
helpful.
if that's him, but I was reading something, it was like an abbreviated, it was like something I would understand, and I like that.
No, he does say something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
I think that's true. And then there's a Stoic philosopher named Seneca who says something similar. He's like, if somebody bullies you and treats you badly, it's sort of like if you're walking by somebody's yard and their dog is barking at you, you just go, well, that's what dogs do. They just bark at fucking anybody who walks by. It's not personal.
Yeah.
And so they're like, you have to think of your enemies more like that. It does kind of help a little bit.
It's true of like giving yourself some distance.
Yeah.
But I think all that stuff is, a lot of it is like, as you get older, it resonates more and more of these things, and philosophy was just never, so Duffy Boudreaux, my friend who wrote on Barry and Documentary Now, and I work with him, he studied philosophy, so he really knows. He's my friend that's like, oh yeah, you should read this, but, and in the Barry room, he was the one that was more the philosophy bent on things. But to me, any sort of philosophy came like I was saying, like kind of through like a cinematic
Yeah.
experience of going like,
That's good though.
why is that? That's interesting. I never thought, and Thin Red Line was especially one of, I've never thought of that way or really considered that you could have made a war film like that.
Yeah.
And the or another thing I thought of, I think it was the Decalogue. Did you ever see that? The Decalogue, the class.
Oh yeah, the Decalogue.
Polish,
yeah.
Pretty brutal about the Ten Commandments, and it's like, but it illustrates them. It's not, they're not didactic in any way. It's
right.
It's just very.
You feel it.
You feel it, and they're dramatized.
Yeah.
And that's like that. I think that series of, I mean, outside of that feeling you get, but also just for writers, it's like a great thing to watch of like, that's how you should, you dramatize it, you don't tell it, Yeah. And it was dramatizing a theme or in the terms of, one of the commandments, but and they never felt, it was amazing. You could watch it, it never feels preachy.
Yes, that's
at
true.
all.
Yeah. That's
You're
the
just
key.
kind of like, it's the key, and maybe that's I was asking you like the difference between religion and philosophy, and why is philosophy here and religion is, this, and that's something I've never understood,
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point. I mean, philosophy should be, I feel like, organic, like what you're describing. It should come up in the course of your experience, and it gets you to reflect a little bit, and then you go back to practical life. It turned into this very professional thing, and then people who study it like get kind of elite and arrogant about it. But I think your attitude towards it is the right one. Like, if I look at a Hitchcock film like Vertigo, I watch that film like every couple of years. I still don't understand it.
Yeah.
I don't get it. I'm like, but it makes me chew on stuff,
Yeah, it's like, okay, that's a movie about obsession. I don't know if you're supposed to care about the plot. I watched it again with one of my kids, and they're like, "This is corny." Like, also, like, wait, what? How would that happen?
Weird.
Like, so if you take it literally, I can understand like it doesn't work as a story. But if you look at it as in terms of like a movie about obsession, and
then it does make sense.
It's about a filmmaker. And this is why critics and some filmmakers love Vertigo so much, is that it's about a filmmaker's obsession, but a guy who was, purportedly an entertainer. A guy that was like, I don't want people to go to the movies to see what they already have. I want to give them a slice of cake instead of I want to entertain you.
Right.
And that this guy within this thing made this movie that is so, clearly about him and his own weird shit. That it's kind of, that you could, in a movie with Jimmy Stewart, that's, through Universal and everything, like this big, that it could be a thing that was so deeply and uncomfortably personal.
It's amazing.
In the guise of
another story,
Hollywood thriller, thriller that's kind of like, I don't know if it totally works,
Right.
But yeah, there's something about it that you could, I think that the strength of Vertigo is almost out of, it's kind of like a cinematic thing, but it's also a thing you only can get in literature. Because sometimes in literature, you'll read a thing and I go, yeah, the story is kind of, but what it's about is this, I'm in this guy's head and his obsession is really fucking interesting and dark and disturbing. He makes this woman dress up like the lady, it's really strange, like what this guy needs. And it's Jimmy Stewart.
I know, it's mind-boggling. Yeah, that it's Jimmy Stewart. Yeah, right.
It's like it's a Wonderful Life. It's the sweetest guy. It's Mr. Joe American, and it's Glenn Miller, and he's like making Kim Novak dress up like this dead woman, and it's really strange. But it's not my favorite Hitchcock movie, but I think it's like interesting and kind of perverted, And
David Lynch films are like this on steroids. I mean, there's like almost no pretense for the plot anymore. It's just it's like this depth psychology stuff. Can we get into the unconscious and like drag the shit up and show it to you and then just end the film?
Yeah, I mean, you could go to like the collective unconscious and David Lynch movie. I'm sure there's been a billion papers written about whatever those archetypes are.
It's cool though. I like that stuff.
Yeah, where you see something like, I mean, Eraserhead. I mean, I remember seeing that movie and
so good,
and going like, oh, this is a movie about the fear of having a kid and the fear of responsibility and these things that's done in this. Is it? I don't know. It's also, but it seems like his stuff just seems so, to me at least, very deeply personal. The best stuff is just so deeply personal. You know, he is an artist where it's like, I don't know if he knows what it means, but it's like, but it connects to me.
I think he doesn't.
It connects to me because it's honest.
Yeah.
You know, so I go, man, because he's being genuine, and the stuff of his that hasn't worked for me, were the stuff where I felt like he was like, I'm David Lynch, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, he does get to a place where he's like, I'm David Lynch for a second, but it's not bad, but it's just not the same.
Yeah.
But something like Blue Velvet, Blue Velvet is just like I think just one of the great movies, and I've grown. I remember not really liking Mulholland Drive when I first saw it, and now I really, really enjoy it. I think it's like,
I need to see that again because I didn't like it, but I need to rewatch it. Yeah,
I think that movie is pretty great. But
is it?
Yeah, Blue Velvet's the one though that I watched. I've seen that.
Oh, that had a huge impact on me.
Yeah, I don't know how many times I've seen that movie.
It scared the hell out of me. Yeah,
it just and that again, that thing of why is the most the most entertaining person in that movie the most evil, you know? And that Frank Booth, and you go, he is a monster, a piece of shit. Like the first scene in that movie with him and Isabel Ferré is one of the hardest scenes to watch in movies.
Yep.
But there's something about, you know, that's what that movie's about, is there's something alluring about that darkness. And it's Kyle MacLachlan trying to, you know, this innocent guy trying to deal with that. You know, it has echoes of that Vertigo thing for sure, of this very nice, you know.
I think so too.
What's the weird seediness going on underneath? They're very American.
Yeah.
Very American stories to me.
The white picket fence, suburb setting. There's I mean, in terms of horror, like you could have like a fear-based horror where you have like a Jason or like, you know, a monster. But then there's this other kind of horror. We talked about this too, you and I and Paul, about the uncanny. But I think in that film, like Blue Velvet, there's like some sublime quality. Like you're just overwhelmed by like this seething evil that's like under everything. It's really creepy. It's really unnerving.
Yeah, even the robin at the end eating the worm, which is like the robins have come home to save the day, and you know, good will fight, you know, overcome evil and all this. That robin looks very fake. It's like animatronic, and it doesn't look real. So again, that is its own.
Yeah,
like. He could have gotten a real bird or gotten someone to do it, but in his mind, it's like, no, it needs to look like this, and that that works because it makes me go, I don't know if that's real.
Yeah. Why does it look so fake? What's going on?
But I want it to be real. I want that to be a real robin, but I don't think that robin exists. You know?
Well, that's what your character, that's what Barry is about too. Like he's like trying to use his imagination and this fiction and like a movie in a way to be somebody else, to like not be this guy. Anyway, it's a fun conversation, man. I really appreciate your time and your insights on this stuff.
Oh man, no man, that was, thank you, and thanks again for the. Not to make everybody at home really jealous, but Steve sent me a reading list, and it was awesome.
Top secret reading list.
Even though the books are all like, all the books are like over 1,000 pages long, but I was like, oh, wait, what do you think I am, man? A robot from Short Circuit? I can just... No, I'm joking. But I love it, man. Thank you so much for that. I really appreciate all that stuff. And I went through it all. I bought all of it, so I'm
I should have just sent you like Illuminati documents, like here.
Yeah, Illuminati. It's
get
like,
on board, Bill.
It's like, Bill, this is all redacted.
This is all you need to read. Yeah.
Yeah. These are redacted. I wouldn't show these to anybody. I got these off the dark web. But if you were cool, you'd read these.
You just fell off the back of a truck.
Yeah, this just felt wink, wink.
Anyway, really fun. Thanks so much, man. I really appreciate it.
Hey, no, thanks for having me, man.
Well, that was amazing. A great conversation with the always incredible Bill Hader.
Inimitable Bill Hader.
Inimitable, yes.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well done.
And so many of the guests on the Chinwag have been inimitable, I think, right?
Oh, this is true. The entire thing, in my opinion, is inimitable. Everybody involved. You, Steve, the folks at home, the guests, it's inimitable.
Yes, the community.
Indeed. And to that end, we have a brief announcement to make to set up next week's episode. And that is that, in fact, next week's episode will be the final Chinwag, the last one.
The ultimate final Chinwag.
Ultimate. Expect a massive showdown between me and Steve.
The Armageddon of Chinwags.
Trying to obliterate each other with useless knowledge as much as we can. But indeed, sad to say that next week will be the final Chinwag episode.
It's the sunset of the Chinwag, sadly.
Yes, it is the sunset. Steve and I will be riding our horses into the sunset. And you won't want to miss that, I don't think.
Please come and basically tune in on the final Chinwag.
Yes, basically tune in. That'll be next week. Yes, indeed. Ultimate Chinwag. Indeed. But until then, please wag on.
Wag on. Chinwag is a production of Treefort Media and Touchy Feely Films, hosted and executive produced by Paul Giamatti and Stephen Asma. Executive producer for Treefort is Kelly Garner, with additional producing by Mary Chulenza. Dan Carey is executive producer for Touchy Feely. Original theme music by Luke Topp, with additional music by Via Mardot. Our associate producer is Aidan Brooks. Audio production supervision by Jared Brom and Matt Dyson. Editing and mixing by Jared Brom. Lastly, for more information, go to chinwagpod.fm and find us on Instagram or TikTok at chinwagpod or on Twitter at chinwag_pod.